Well, good evening. I'm Brian Reagan. This is
Tyler Kelly.
And we welcome you to our Twilight Talks on Abraham. Tonight we are in Genesis 15. We're going to read the whole chapter real quick, and then we're going to hit some high points. Begin verse 1 says, After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. But Abram said, Lord God, what will you give me? Seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. Then Abram said, Look, you've given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir. Then he brought him outside and said, Look now toward heaven and count the stars, if you're able to number them. And he said to him, So shall your descendants be.
And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. Then he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it? So he said to him, Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Then he brought all these to him and cut them in two down the middle and placed each piece opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds in two.
And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abram, Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age.
But in the 4th generation those shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. And it came to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between these pieces, or those pieces. On the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, To your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadamites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites.
All right. So yesterday when we looked at this, we commented that Abram asked God, he said, What are you going to give me? I don't have a kid. You told me I'd have a kid, so what are you going to give me? What are you going to give me as an irrevocable demonstration that you're going to keep your word? What are you going to give me for a son? And then verse 8, he says, Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it? And so the Lord understands, and this is what the book of Hebrews is talking about, when the book of Hebrews says that when he could swear by no greater, he swore by himself, that by two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to lie. Okay? God gave an oath and God gave a promise. He confirmed his oath with a covenant. Confirmed his oath with a covenant. And that's this right here. The promise of Abram, the blessing of Abram, is nearly 10 years prior to this covenant. 10 to 12 years prior to this covenant. This covenant makes it all the more troubling for what will happen in the next chapter. Because God, in having Abram lay out these animals as a sacrifice and putting blood in the system of old world ancient covenants, and they're still used around the world today this way, but in this system of using covenants, what we find is that this blood between the two of them, that God, in sending that lamp of smoke and fire down the middle, God was walking the trail of blood. That you had substitutes that you would put out in that covenant. The animals represented God's side and Abram's side. And the moment that God passed through on the trail of blood, God was binding himself, saying that if I don't keep my word, so shall it be to me as it is to these animals. God was invoking his own death punishment if God doesn't keep his covenant. And so, when he sees this, and verse 18, he said, I don't know about, no, that's 18. On that same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, this was the making of the covenant. Prior to this, God had given his word in a promise. Now he's bound himself with a blood oath covenant. Abram literally has no skin in the game yet. He will, but right now he has no skin in the game. God has bound himself first to his word, to his promises, everything that he promised to Abram. God has bound himself first. And that's going to come into play as this story advances. But just remember that on the side of making relationships, we are the weaker side. God is the stronger side. God has always been acting by grace for our benefit through faith from the beginning. Do you have some other thoughts on this one?
No, sir.
All right. With that, we bid you good evening, Lord willing. We'll see you in the morning.